Storm Tracker Podcast.
Welcome back to the Storm Tracker Podcast. I'm Marcus Benjamin, and I'm joined today by the legendary Larry Blustein, kind enough to join me today here on a Monday. We're calling it Blu Mondays, of course. Representing CanesCounty.com, part of the Rivals Network. Make sure you subscribe, share, and like this channel, and make sure you follow the podcast on all platforms as well. Larry, it's football is just around the corner, man, and we're excited to kind of see football games live and in action. NFL preseason just happened, so it's that time, the Hall of Fame game, and locally here, Zach Thomas, made it into the Hall of Fame.
Nice.
Yeah, a couple of guys that probably should have been in there for the Hurricanes. Might be a topic for another day. Devin Hester, Reggie Wayne, Andre Johnson, but we'll see what happens next year. But yeah, football is definitely officially here, and high school will kind of kick things off for us. And you had a chance to go to several media days, and I saw you, of course, at the Football Hotbed Media Day. And just like any other year, Blue, there's just plenty of talent here in South Florida. But I would say for me, it kind of more so than maybe any other year is that you've got so much talent on the elite teams. I would say maybe there's about 6 or maybe 7 elite teams out there that have just a lot of talent collectively. But there's still some talented guys on some other teams as well. What was your assessment of Media Day and just the overall talent this year in South Florida?
Well, appreciate you having me, Marcus. Obviously you're right. I think we've seen the power gravitate towards a lot of these schools. You look at Chaminade Madonna and 1M, and you look at American Heritage Plantation and Miami Central and 2M, but we're going to get back to 2M because I don't think there's a classification that comes close to 2M as far as total talent from Jacksonville all the way down to Miami. But in 3M, you could see now Homestead has emerged as a yearly power, somebody to keep an eye on. They went to their first ever state championship last year, and obviously, as you alluded to, St. Thomas Aquinas, which is a wealth of talent that continues to get deeper and deeper every year. Perhaps one of the most, probably the deepest running game and most talented running game in the nation this year. They got 3 Power 5 backs. So, and then Christopher Columbus, but the thing is that's great, and you saw it at Media Day, is there's these teams pushing. You see Norland, who's had a great offseason of bringing in a lot of kids and a lot of talent. Miami Palmetto pushing a little bit to get some of that recognition. Blanche Ely and Pompano went 10-1 last year, and certainly loaded up again. So you see kind of a lot of those schools, trying to push their way in outside of the 2M, like in 3M, it's going to be St. Thomas. There's not very many other programs other than them and Homestead who helped themselves out. In 4M, you have Columbus, but you also have Palmetto, you have Western, you have Monarch, the schools that are pushing their way in, which is a lot of fun. And then obviously, as I say, Chaminade could start making reservations and printing their rings, because there's nobody's going to touch them in 1M. It's just not in the cards. But the 2M thing, the 2M classification, Marcus, is so intriguing because obviously you had the first ever Dave Broward matchup last year for the state title in the Heritage and Miami Central.
Yeah.
But you look in the South and you have Booker T. Washington. And you can't deny that somebody like Ice Harris hasn't turned that program around at a point where they think they can, contend. And rightfully so. They won 9 games last year after 5 the year before. He's a difference maker, and you could see that. I mean, he's just, and he's a guy that doesn't think that anybody could beat them, and I like that type of attitude. But you also have Northwestern in that mix. You have Miami Central in that mix. You have Miami New Orleans in that mix. Right in that 4A. Then you go up a little bit more and you have American Heritage. You have Cardinal Gibbons. Jacksonville Bulls is going to be another force. Last year, they only lost by 7 in the region semifinals to American Heritage. So there's a lot of talent. And I think South Florida kind of showcases that, that even the lesser, quote unquote, lesser teams are trying to, make their way back in. Northwestern, obviously, with Michael Lee Harris has made some major strides. Very young team. So I don't really look for them to make a huge push this year. I do think Booker T. Washington could battle and, come out, because then, they only have to play one of those teams, either New Orleans or Miami Central. So it's not like they have to play every one of them to get to state. It's just one or the other. And then, as we know, there's been a lot of talk in the New Orleans camp. As far as too much talk sometimes. But do they have, they brought in 22 kids. But to me, when you bring in 22 kids to any environment, you're getting 22 really good kids that were the deal where they went. So how did they become humble? And how did they say, okay, there's one ball and let's spread it around? And that's the toughest thing to do, because the chemistry is the toughest thing. So as far as that's concerned, we have a lot of teams in the mix. Miami Palmetto really went out and where you build these teams is on the line, because we don't have a lot of marquee offensive linemen in South Florida. I mean, they have a handful, but not a lot of marquee. So what Palmetto did is they went out and got offense and defensive linemen. They got Davion Dixon, who's committed as a junior to Notre Dame from Berlin Jesuit. They went out and got 3 or 4 offensive linemen, Ferguson kid, a couple from different areas. So they want to build their fortress around some of the talent that they have. So obviously they're going to be mixed. Columbus returns their quarterback, who's Mendoza, really, really good one. Jose Leon, who committed to Appalachian State. So, but getting to the media day, we'll get to our local one first. We had 2, the BCAA media day, which happened earlier in the week, and all the Broward County schools came, or the Broward County athletic schools, and St. Thomas and Heritage, and that's the thing, because BCAA, and I always tell people, being a member of those conferences has perks, because remember, if you're a St. Thomas or Cardinal Gibbons or American Heritage or a Chaminade, you have to come up, if you're not in the BCAA, Marcus, you have to come up with 6 games. Think about if St. Thomas had a schedule 6 games, who's going to play them? So this is the great thing. This year, Chaminade Madonna comes into the BCAA, where, obviously their schedule's set for this year, but next year they won't have to headhunt and play all these, marquee teams. They could play 1, 2, or 3 of them and not, open up with 6 major teams. And then next year, American Heritage does the same thing. Great media day, well run. And then on Saturday, we had Dade and Broward teams, as you said, the hotbed media day. Brandon O'Doy put on a really good show. A lot of the teams came. A lot of the teams had a lot of fun. The teams all got a chance to, put their players out there, and everyone got a chance to hear them. It was live streamed. And that's what it's supposed to be. You're supposed to have, it's about the kids. And we say that all the time. It's about what they do. It's about, promoting them. And I know a lot of schools that don't show, almost want to slap them on the wrist and say, what are you thinking? Why wouldn't you come to an event that's going to promote your kids? And those are usually the same coaches, Marcus, that are bitching and moaning and come, February and March. Oh, my kid has nowhere to go. Well, if you got them out there earlier and exposed them, because the media is not going to come to you. You got to come to where they're going to be. And a lot of those schools, the other day, especially at the hotbed one, came. Goldman's not going to get a lot of publicity, but they came. Killian, because they lost so much talent, they're not going to get a lot of publicity. North Miami, they came. Hialeah, they came. And that's essential, because a lot of these media outlets, and as well as I do, have their hands full with these marquee kids. So they're not going to really worry about the Fergusons and, the Dr. Crops and schools like that. So that's what the media days are about. And like I said, I got a chance to go to 2 in Orlando, one for Orange County, one for Seminole. And also I went to Pinellas and Hillsborough and Tampa. And then I got a chance to see Polk County and the Heartland teams. And all of them had the same theme, get the kids out there. And they have fun. They take pictures. Memories will last a lifetime. You know how the colleges, the ACC media days, the SEC media days. And now it's, and as I was telling somebody the other day on our radio show, that's what it's kind of morphed into. And good for them, because now these kids and the coaches have something to look forward to. And when they go there, not only have a chance to show their team off, but, because you ran one of the, one of the rooms at media day, that all the kids kind of converged together and, kind of like point fingers and we're going to be you. And it's good. Yeah. That's healthy. It's healthy.
Yeah, definitely. I thought it was a great turnout for the hotbed one. I didn't get a chance to go to the BCAA one, but my guy, John Garcia from Rivals, was there. Plenty of content coming from Rivals and Kings County from both of those media days. But yeah, it was an outstanding turnout. I got a chance to talk to a lot of coaches to really kind of establish relationship to a lot of different coaches. Talked to Mike Lee Harris, talked to him and told him that, hey, I covered you when you were in high school.
Right.
Which I did. And, for the Miami Sports Tribune back in the day with JT and Chuck. And he was saying like, yeah, I was just running across, some content that he saw from himself from that outlet in those days. Yeah. So it's a great time.
That's what it's all about. It really is. And, the funny thing is yesterday, one of the, Tavani Mizell, who's a commitment to Kentucky, big running back out of Western. He ran a picture when he was 7 years old, and I was in the picture with him, and, saying that these are two guys that are going to, him and another guy that were going to be really, really, really special. And it turns out that he is. And those are the fun days, because you look at the media day now and all the interviews you did here in 2023, when we get to 27 or 28, you'll look back at them and say, wow, that was pretty fun. Yeah. And look at, we got a chance to talk to them before they were, in the NFL.
Yeah, I really have to start posting some more throwback videos myself, because I was going through my phone trying to open up space so I can have more space to record. And I just saw all these videos of a young James Williams, of a young Rashard Smith, of a young Henry Parrish, some of these guys that are currently on the team now.
Yeah, they're good to see.
Yeah, it's definitely nice to see. And Miami continues to get kids that are from South Florida and the state of Florida. And, those players that I mentioned and many more, the Reuben Baines and the Daniel Josephs, and there's just a ton of talent that at Miami was able to get in not just the 2023 class, but also now in this 2024 class. You got 7 guys that are already from South Florida that are committed to the class, and JoJo Trader, OJ Frederic, Ryan Mack. He also got Vincent Shavers, Chris Wheatley Humphrey, and of course Chance Robinson, and then a couple of other guys from Florida, and Derek Plaz, Artavius Jones, and Isaiah Thomas. Out of all those guys, you got one offensive lineman, Blue, in Derek Plaz out of Jacksonville. Tremendous talent there. But the other guys, for the most part, are skill guys, linebackers. You got a linebacker in there as well with Vince. But how important is it to kind of concentrate, I guess, on certain position groups in the state of Florida? I think here in South Florida, you got receivers, DBs, your D linemen, linebackers. But does Miami really need to concentrate on other positions outside of the country?
Well, they do. I mean, they get kids from all over. You look in this 2023 grouping that's on campus now, and you got guys from IMG, and you got guys from California and Northeast, and Alabama and Georgia. And I think it's always kind of been like that. I think the fans kind of make that a little bit more than it is. Because you even look back when Miami was dominating college football, still lost to Steve Hutchinson's, you still lost to Marvin Jones, you still lost to Derek Thomas's, and so you can't get everybody. And I think, like you illustrated with the names that you pointed out, they're getting the kids. They're still getting kids, and I think as Miami starts winning, because remember we're the lot. I tried to explain the other day, the off season is a long ass time. I mean, you only play for 4 months, you're off 8. So in that 8 months, you're speculating, you're doing all this stuff. And Miami's coming off for us, we don't realize, we don't play as much emphasis on a 5-7 season, no bowl games, as they do in Des Moines, Iowa, or Minnesota, or Texas. That's what they remember Miami for. So when Miami does get a marquee kid, a 4-star, 5-star, 3-star, whatever, a lot of the people around the country are saying, how's that happening? But here we know, because there's a culture change that is unfolding right before our eyes. And we see it, here in South Florida all the time, because it's magnified, whether you or Frank or anybody else brings that out. We're seeing the what Mario Cristobal does. And we know that last year wasn't him. He inherited, perhaps, and I told you this before, one of the worst rosters in the history of Miami football. Yeah. And, and then he got injuries on top of that. And then he was forced to use a walk-on running back and a, second and third team quarterback that didn't really have a lot of experience. Couldn't get your most reliable slot kid was out for 6 games. And so those things happen when you don't have depth. Those things happen when when the roster isn't filled out. And I think that's what happened in the offseason. The opportunity to come to Miami to play for a Mario Cristobal and a really good coaching staff, I think that's brought the kids in. But, and that's a big but, they've got to win. They've got to win this year. Whether it's 7 games or 8 games, they've got to win. And what that shows, and when you go out and get your 25 kids and you say, listen, we progressed. We were 5-7 last year, and we were really not competitive. I mean, we could have lost to Virginia, could have lost to Georgia Tech. So I think that's what, so it doesn't, to me, in a nutshell, I think Miami's done really well, as you said, South Florida wise, which is great. And don't worry, they'll all still come, but you got to win. And because now there's too many teams. And remember, now you added another Power 5 school in the state of Florida, in UCF. And, obviously people can't laugh at them anymore, because their schedule in a lot of ways is tougher than Miami, Florida, and Florida State, playing Oklahoma and Oklahoma State and Kansas and Baylor and schools like that. So when you go out and, recruit, you got to recruit not only against Miami, Florida, Florida State, but you got to recruit against UCF. So I think Miami will keep a lot of guys home. Classic example. Arguably the 2 best running backs for 24-25 have committed to UCF. And Stacey Gage from St. Thomas and Tavion Swint from Osceola, 2 of them arguably the best 2 running backs. So, they're in the game now, and I think Miami does well in South Florida, as you mentioned. There's, unlike some of the other regimes in the past, like Al Golden, they didn't have really any ties here in South Florida, but how deep that this coaching staff with Kevin Beard and Timmy Harris and, a lot Mirabal, and obviously with Coach Cristobal, it runs deep. And they all went to high school down here and played college or attended college down here. So that makes a difference when you're going out and selling your program, that there are people who have gone through it and been there, done that, and you got to respect them. So I think Miami every year will get their kids, but they do need a national mix. And I think with the, getting the 2 coordinators who have recruited nationally before, and you got somebody like Cristobal and Mirabal who've done that West Coast thing. Mirabal was at Marshall, so he got an East Coast thing. Mario was at Alabama, so he's got that South lure. So to answer your question, I think Miami's going about it the right way. I wouldn't, look too much into what they don't have. Just kind of look at what they do have.
Yeah, absolutely. And the coaches that they brought in will kind of expand their recruiting base as well.
Yeah,
With Lance Guidry and Shannon Dawson having ties to the Bayou area, the Louisiana, the boot,
sure.
as they call it, is it's another talent laden area that they'll continue to bring in kids from. And a couple of kids already on the team from that area, running backs, Trevante Citizen and AJ Allen. And so Miami is of course doing well and in recruiting, and I agree with you about winning. I do think they do have to win to not only just kind of keep this class intact, but to possibly flip some guys
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
next upcoming months. And one being, in my personal opinion, Jeremiah Smith. I think if there's any chance that he flips from Ohio State, Miami has to have an outstanding season. I think that's in a two team race. I think it's maybe 60 to 70% that he stays with Ohio State, but I think if there's any chance that they have to indeed win. So I totally agree with you there. And UCF, I agree, is going to be a major player. I mean, if you look at, certainly the record the past 5 years, I think UCF, wins with wins and losses. So,
yeah.
albeit they may have played
A lesser schedule. Yeah,
but that's going to change, like you said, with them now being in the
yeah.
Big
Oh, yeah.
12. And with all this conference realignment, Blue, I mean,
Yeah.
there's going to be like 50 teams in the Big 12.
Yeah. Well, 50 teams everywhere soon.
Yeah. So,
Because you can still got to find a place for Oregon State and Washington State and Cal and Stanford. Then,
right.
Those are four really, really good programs. And, they're not going to be on the outside looking in. But I think that what happened with the Pac-12 was their inability to land a really good TV contract. And that kind of hurt because when you see, obviously SEC's tight end, CBS and ESPN, and the same thing with the ACC gets their part. Big Ten definitely. So when the Pac-12 didn't get their slice of the pie, then there's really if you're not getting TV revenue, it's going to be hard for those programs to exist. Like a USC, a Stanford, a Cal, or some of those schools like that are private schools. I mean, they need that revenue like Miami. And Miami needs that revenue stream. And the only way you survive is with the TV, the crazy TV money. But we hear all this talk about FSU going into the Big Ten and, whatever it is, it's going to be all interchangeable, especially with 12 teams coming next year in the playoffs. What you're going to do is it doesn't matter where you are, what conference, you're just going to, if you're the best 12 teams, you're going to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Should be fun to kind of see how it all plays out with this all conference realignment. But Miami seems to be behind the eight ball with that because they're in a deal that's until 2036 and it's $120 million buyout. And that doesn't seem worth it at this point. That's a conversation on another day, Blue. So let's kind of talk about this team, man, this Miami team. And what we've heard here in this first week of fall camp is that James Williams is going to be moving around, and the outstanding 5-star safety out of American Heritage could be moving closer to the line of scrimmage. And that's something that we've talked about, it seems like, for forever. And when we saw him at American Heritage, he was dominant when he was at the line of scrimmage. And even at Miami, he made plays. When he did make plays, big ones, it was usually around the line of scrimmage. And that seems to be where his positioning will kind of go to this season and beyond. And he seems to be ready to kind of make that transition, make that change himself. But how much does this really kind of lock this whole defense? I mean, if he ends up moving to, let's just say, like a star position, or kind of moves in that position in certain situations, then at the safety position, of course, you'll have your All-American safety in Cam Kinchens. But who's going to be on the other side? Is it going to be a Markeith Williams? Is it going to be a Jaden Harris? Those are pretty much kind of the guys that are there, because right behind James Williams and Cam Kinchens, it's somewhat thin and at safety. So what is the potential look of this defense once James Williams kind of continues to move closer to the line?
Well, to answer your James Williams question, I got screamed at for saying the very thing that's happening now, is that it's the need for a 6'5", 225-pound safety is not what it once was with Louis Oliver and Cam Chancellor at Seattle, and some of the bigger safeties, David Fulcher back in the day with the Bengals, and Steve Atwater, all those guys like that. Back then, there was a need for that 6'5", 230-pound headhunter that would knock your block off. But especially with him, he's so athletic, and let's credit Pat Surtain Sr. Because he's the one that had the foresight to put his hand down, or to get him in the outside linebacker position where he could drop into pass coverage. And being a defensive back that he's been over the years, and this is, people have to understand, he gets really valuable now because he's a tackler. He's a guy that'll go after the pass rusher. He's got that quickness. But also he has the ability to cover, looser hips, athleticism. So having him as an outside linebacker, or as you mentioned, star position, is going to give him that ability to create up front, drop into pass coverage. And what that does is it lessens the responsibility in the secondary. So getting, as you said, somebody to fill in the secondary is going to be a lot easier now, because they're going to get in there with not that much pressure on them. And Avante Williams, or whoever it may be, is going to see that his job is a whole lot easier than, let's say, Cam Kinchens was last year, or even James Williams. And I think that his move to bring him closer to the game is going to make that front seven even better, with a 4-man line, 3 linebackers, and he could step in and step out. Will give them 7 viable guys, maybe even 8. Where if you look back at FSU last year when they played Miami and other teams, they walked up 8 guys, and Miami's going to have a chance in a team that runs the ball a lot or does a short passing game to stack that box, where they couldn't do last year. They just didn't have the talent to do it last year. But as you mentioned, with the ability at linebacker now with Francisco Mauagawa, who we see is a really nice looking kid, very physical, great athlete, and then Wesley Bassint with a year under his belt. Now you're giving yourself an opportunity with 2 solid linebackers. And, oh, by the way, your leading tackler the last 2 years in Corey Flagg having an opportunity to come, off the bench or be in the mix. So you've gotten stronger. Your defensive front's already gotten a whole lot stronger over the last couple of years. You're going to see kids like Nigel Lee Kelly and players like that people have kind of forgotten about, Jafari Harvey. And so to answer your question, I think that it doesn't really matter who you rotate in at safety, but their job's going to be a whole lot easier than the job has been the last couple of years.
Yeah, the secondary is looking just deep, and that's not something that we could say, a lot in these last few years. Jedias Richard is a player that seems to, really kind of moving his way up this depth chart. And Corey Couch is someone who's going to get a lot of playing time. And the Brown brothers are really starting to show, their worth as well. A couple of guys also out of American Heritage. So really excited to kind of see how this secondary kind of plays out. Lastly, Blue, we'll talk about the wide receiver position. And it's an interesting one because everybody's just kind of assuming that Kobe Young is going to be wide receiver 1. But wide receiver 2 is kind of out there. You got Tyler Harrell in the mix. You got Jacoby George in the mix as well. And we all know that Xavier Strepo is going to be that slot guy, probably backed up by a Ray Joseph and maybe a a Robbie Washington
And Brashard Smith, who's still
and Brashard Smith as well. Yeah. But that wide receiver 2 position is kind of, I would say, maybe up for grabs, or maybe they'll rotate guys. If Kobe Young goes down, who's going to be that wide receiver 1? Is it going to be Isaiah Horton, who can finally kind of step into, that place, or is he going to be the wide receiver 2? Your opinions on this wide receiver room depth and how it will play out?
They got a lot of, options, but the options have to work out. The young kid, Isaiah Horton, obviously is going to be somebody who's going to be looked at. Jacoby George is a guy that they had hoped to be the guy in the Z position that would take over. He had a really good spring, kind of to make up for a subpar year. As you mentioned, Bobby Washington's going to be one of those guys that's going to have an opportunity with his speed to do some things. Frank Ladson is still underperformed, but he still has the ability. And we watched him in high school, and he was solid.
Yeah.
I don't know if they've given up on Michael Redding, but that's a kid that came out of IMG in the Pensacola area that when he came out, I thought had a chance to be pretty special. But it's all about productivity. And now you have an opportunity, as you mentioned, with some of those new faces that are coming aboard, that they're going to see them in practice. And Kevin Beard is going to say, "Hey, coach, we need to get this guy. We need to get Isaiah more reps because I think that he's productive." Or, "Hey, you know what? Kobe Young's doing a great job." And they know too, Marcus, that Xavier Restrepo is going to be the dude. It doesn't really matter. He's a productive kid. He doesn't pass all the eye tests in the size and the speed. But you know what? If he catches himself 35 to 40 balls this year or even more, and gets a couple of scores inside the 20 and 25, that's what he's utilized for. He's going to get you those first downs over the middle. Is he going to take 160 yards? Probably not, but that's not what he's designed. And Miami's in a situation now that they haven't been in. They've got position players. So Kobe Young could stretch the defense with, a long ball or a, intermediate ball. Same thing with Isaiah Horton. Then you got a guy like Ray Joseph who could take the top off the defense because he could, either coming off as a slot or maybe even lining up as a running back and then going in motion. And then because what he's going to do inevitably, if you do that, you're going to get a linebacker. You tell me any linebacker that's going to stay with him, and that's what I think the big difference is. I don't think there's a defined, right now. I don't think there's a defined 1, 2, or 3. I think that's going to have to be worked out, as the season progresses.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's an exciting one, and it's another group that's extremely deep on this roster, as far as players that you can actually, play in real games. So we're getting close, Blue. We're almost at that first home game. First day of September. It's on a Friday night, so I'm gonna be missing some high school games that night. But I'm still excited, very excited for this season. Larry, where can people find more information from you?
Well, we're on Prep Red Zone Florida, which covers the entire state. Our LarryBlustein.com covers Dade and Broward. We have our weekly radio show on WQAM, which you're going to be part of a lot during the year, getting your expert analysis in there as well. We do our 6 Ring podcast, University of Miami, every Monday night from 8:30 to 9:30. And just, do a lot of different things, come on this show, come on, a bunch of other podcasts. And, it's a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. People don't realize, though, people like you, me, some others, this football hasn't stopped. As soon as the season ended, we were right back at the grind at Under Armour or, Rivals camp, and then 7-on-7s and line camps and all the way down to the media days this last week. So this hasn't stopped, and certainly the attention on high school football will be magnified once again this year with the second year of the Broward County Football Showcase, which is bringing in arguably one of the best teams in the country in Bosco and one of the best teams in the country in St. Francis Academy in Maryland. And St. John's comes back, and they've done a great job. Already have we're not even finished with year 2, and they've already got commitments from Bishop Gorman and Mater Dei for year 3. So they've done a tremendous job in it. For once, our teams don't always have to go out of the area, but although Bishop Gorman and Central is going to be a war out in Vegas, and, that's the one team you can honestly say that will go out and give Gorman everything they can handle. And that's a very talented Gorman team, as we watched last year against Chaminade. So I'm excited. A lot of local matchups that are going to take place that are, between Central and Chaminade alone. I mean, they're Chaminade opens up, as I said, against St. Francis Academy, and it comes back against Cardinal Gibbons, Miami Central, Bergen Catholic, and American Heritage. So it's
even before that, they start out with Northwestern.
Yeah, in the kickoff classic.
And
a lot of people aren't really, because after they mauled them last year, they're not giving them as much respect. But Venice comes to play at Trask Powell this year, defending state 4S runner-up. We've got a lot of good talent, even in the kickoff classics, where you have Booker T. Washington against American Heritage, Miami New Orleans against Blanche Ely. So, I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely. Larry Blustein, kind enough to join me again here on Blu Mondays here. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast and this YouTube channel as well. Broward County, Dade County, plenty of talent, but make sure you find exclusive information on kids and the Miami Hurricanes athletic programs at canescounty.com, part of the Rivals Network. That's going to wrap it up until the next episode.